Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Pitch Talk.
We are fans of football dropping vlogs, videos and podcasts on the beautiful game.
Check out our videos on YouTube and Instagram's IGTV,
including special feature segments, vlogs such as
5 minutes with the G,
The Straight Shooting View,
Coaching with JBK,
audio on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts,
Podomatic, Spotify and other podcast platforms.
Join the Pitch Talk revolution on social media, Twitter, Instagram.
We have a group and fan page on Facebook.
The pitch is where we eat.
the pitch is where we sleep.
And the pitch is where we talk.
I can see you now. I can see you now and then.
Pitch Talks special feature.
Welcome to this Pitch Talk special feature. Yours truly, Straight Shooting LJA, and I am here with
JBK.
We want to dive into underrepresentation of black and minority ethnic female players in football. Anita Asante says the lack of representation both on the team and behind the scenes is another challenge, especially as the number of BAME players has decreased over the past few years in the women's game. From leadership to organisation management, the lack of representation is a barrier, she said. People don't have that connection necessarily to the game because they don't see people that look like them or have shared or have their shared lived experience. Asante remembers England legend Rachel Yankey leading a training session when she was a teenager at Arsenal and says it made a huge difference having someone she could relate to. She said she comes from a similar background and all of these connections that we could build made me feel like this was a space that I really wanted to be in. So I think there is a lot to be said for what Anita Asante it said in the quote there, where it's like, if you can't see someone who looks like you as someone high ranking, like a chairman or an owner of a club, then what have you got to aspire to? And not everybody has that motivation inside themselves to be their own inspiration. Some people need that spark. Some people need a kick up the backside. Some people need to be able to visualize themselves in a position that they see somebody that looks like them is already in. So I think that's why for American youngsters, it was important that Barack Obama became president, because it's like, oh, it's always said I can be anything. There's been all these barriers, but now there's a black man in the White House. I can now be that. I would have loved to have had that over here where there was a black prime minister. But the fact of the matter is that's a totally different story, and Obama was great for America, but he wasn't representing us as black British people. It was black American. But it's one of them ones, I think, especially with obviously young women. I mean, there's been a massive growth in obviously the women's game since 2012 in this country, and in the States it's always been massive. But I think there's still that perception problem where, as Anita Asante said, there is that perception that it is basically a white space, because in terms of progressing into the game, there's those barriers where all you're seeing is an all-white team. It's like, I don't know, that players may feel that I don't know if I can fit into that. And if I do go into it, it's like, how much of a pressure cooker is it going to be? Because you look at the situation as well, that I wanted to bring up too, is the perception of women's football after the FA apologising to Eniola, Aluko and Drew Spence for racially discriminatory remarks. And you look at what happened. You look at what happened with the Mark Sampson versus Eniola Aluko situation, where the FA clearly sided with Mark Sampson from day one, and they like the mudslinging. Where we did a pitch talk, pitch talk show discussing this a few years ago when it happened, and it was one of them ones where the way Eniola Aluko was treated, the way Drew Spence was treated, Aluko was a lot more outspoken, and she got basically ostracized from that women's squad for it. which was an absolute disgrace because she was speaking up. She was speaking up after the race. After I was going to get on to Lianne Sanderson, because Lianne Sanderson basically got ostracized from the squad as well because she stood up and said, yeah, this was said to Aluko. This was said. She corroborated Aluko's story and got ostracized for it. And it's like, wait, hold on a minute. So the victim and somebody who's spoken up for the victim of this racially discriminatory language have been ostracized. So what kind of message does that send out to someone of a black or minority ethnic background who wants to get in the game? When you're seeing that happen in the England squad, you're gonna automatically step back and think to yourself,
why do I even want to play the sport?
Exactly. I don't want that happening to me. And then if you become a parent, you're going to be like, well, I don't want that to happen to my kids. So there starts to be a generational knock-on effect that people don't get into the game because of that. Mm-hmm. And I think that has a massive, massive impact. That kind of perception, when you've got that as your view of one side of the game or just the game in general, that level of like really systemic racism, that is basically encouraged by the powers that be in football, not just the FA, but FIFA, UEFA, with their lack of punishments, and sometimes their punishments, when they do hand them out, are utterly pointless. And it's one of them where when you're seeing stuff like that, is it any wonder that people from a black and or minority ethnic background don't want to get into the game? Because it's not showing itself to be inclusive. I mean, you've got the whole taking a knee thing, which I've done a couple of vlogs on youtube.com/pitchtalk already. But it's one of them was taking the knee is a token gesture, and it was always going to be that. And I said in June of 2020 that, yeah, it's all good, like Premier League having Black Lives Matter on the sides of shirts and on the backs of shirts and all that. But at the end of the day, until there's change at the top, it means nothing. And taking the knee with Match of the Day is just part of the show and has been for a long time. It's just part of the show now. And it's like, there's no real change that has come from it. So for me, the underrepresentation of black and minority ethnic people, women within the women's game is of no real surprise. It's disappointing. It's sad because the women's game has always been, in my opinion, from what I've seen of it over the past, probably 6-7 years that we've been discussing it regularly on Pitch Talk shows, it's been one of them ones where, and from going to the Women's FA Cup final back in 2015, youtube.com/Pitch Talk for Pitch Talk at the Women's FA Cup final in 2015, we saw a lot more women there. We met girls on the ball there as well. We caught up with them. It was also, there were a lot of children there. Like black children, white children. We even interviewed some as well. So as I said, youtube.com/Pitch Talk. It was one of them where you saw that diversity in the fans, but it's disappointing to see that there's not that diversity in the players.
Or
the men, and on staff. But the men's and women's games sadly seems to be similar in regards to the hierarchy. So where you've got head coaches, chairmen, board members and all that, where they are not representative of the nation that they're in. Because Britain is very multicultural. England is very multicultural. London is very multicultural. So so the sporting institutions need to represent that. Government needs to represent that, but that's also a different issue as well. And for me, I think accessibility, from Fatuga Dada, who was mentioning about accessibility when she was 16, and the FA not helping. The FA just saying, oh yeah, well, just ask one of the first team players. It's like, dude, no, like she's a 16-year-old. And the 16-year-old female at that, there needs to be a safe space created for females to be able to get around. There just does, especially minors. Because speaking as a father myself, I wouldn't want any of my girls to have to ask someone that they don't know a big grown adult, I wouldn't want them at 16 and below having to walk up to basically a perfect stranger and say, can I jump in your car with you? No, that should never have to happen, especially not for minors. Not even just women, not even just girls. It shouldn't happen for minors at all. It's one of them ones. There should be a pathway, and the FA have a lot to answer for and a lot of responsibility because they're supposed to be. Do you remember what Martin Glenn said when Sam Allardyce was sacked? The FA are the guardians of the game, not the galaxy. Guardians of the game. Martin Glenn said that word for word, that the FA are the guardians of the game. So it's one of them ones where it's like the FA needs to step up and sort that out. And I said accessibility for those from impoverished backgrounds. How are you gonna get them? How are you gonna get the money to go 144 miles? That's absurd. And even with back in, I think it was 2014, when we did Pitch Talk Meets Manisha Taylor. And she brought up at that time about St. George's Park. It's great having that hub for the England team and future talent. But at the end of the day, to get up to workshops there, it's not cheap. I mean, if you can get a bursary, then that's all good. But those are few and far between nowadays. Mm-hmm. You can't go up there on a day trip and come back the same day. You have to stay over. So there's transport costs with that. There's there's hotel stays that you have to factor in as well. And especially if these courses are at weekends, you're paying a premium for travel and hotels anyway because it's a weekend. So it's one of them where that can run into hundreds of pounds. And if you're from an impoverished background, you can't necessarily afford that. And also there's the issue of if you can get time off work. If you can't get time off work, then you're taking unpaid leave. If you're taking unpaid leave and then having to shell out a few £100, that can very quickly get pricey. So these accessibility barriers, the stereotypes, the perception of women's football, which I think was majorly hurt for those from a black and minority ethnic background because of the Eniola, Aluko and Drew Spence versus Mark Sampson issue. I think that did major damage because I said it's one of them ones. You literally saw what? 2 black women, 3 including Lianne Sanderson, who were basically hung out to dry by the England manager and the Football Association, who backed that manager as well. And then later on turned around and apologized. So it's one of them ones where it's like, if you're seeing that happening, why are you going to want to put yourself at risk like that? Why are you going to want to put yourself through that? And I think these are major reasons why there is underrepresentation in the women's game on the pitch, let alone off it. Because at the end of the day, it's one of them ones, at least with the men's game, black players are very heavily represented on the pitch. But then once you start going up the chain, then you start to see that underrepresentation. So it's one of them ones where it's like in the women's game, this is happening on the pitch where that underrepresentation is happening. So it's like it's just one of them ones where I said there are so many different strands as to why it's happening. And the powers that be keep asking the question, keep doing these token gestures, keep doing these initiatives, but there needs to be more done to attack that systemic problem. Mm-hmm. And I said, when you've got those stereotypes, when you've got managers who may not think that they've got the time to invest in players from impoverished backgrounds that they don't understand, that manager may want to understand that player and be like, you know what? I want to understand. I want to take the time and sit down with you. But because the way the game's set up, it's all predicated on results. You may be out of a job in 3-4 games when that player may need 6, 7, 8, 9 months of mentoring. And even that's a key one. That's another key as well. If you haven't got any black and minority ethnic head coaches, chairman, or anything like that, how you can't then do mentoring. You can't that side then lacks as well. So it's like, okay, we've got nobody who looks like us in the top levels of the game, and there's no one to mentor us and encourage us to go for those spots because of that fact. And in women's football, from the outside looking in, it looks like it's even worse than in the men's game because of that. And I said that underrepresentation of players on the pitch shows that, in my opinion, that it's even worse. So it's like it's absolutely and utterly frustrating that this is the case, because it really shouldn't be. It really should not be the case. And the FA will try and turn a blind eye and say, oh, we're doing this, we're doing that. We've got this advisory. We've got this discrimination, inclusivity, whatever buzzwords, catchphrases you want to put in front of it. And that's another issue as well. Not to deviate too much, but you look at Marcus Rashford and what he's done recently. We will do a special feature on that because it deserves it. But look at the way certain sections of the media have attacked him.
Sterling.
And look at Raheem Sterling and his community work as well. And it's a case of where, like, look at how the media vilified Eniola Aluko because she was going up against the England manager Mark Sampson. Look at how she was vilified for it. And there were a lot of people coming out and saying, oh no, she's lying, oh she's this, she's that. I said we did drill down into that situation in detail on a pitch talk show. We'll put the link in the description below. But it's one of them ones where it's like, when you've got those kind of situations happening, as I said, is it any wonder that people from black and minority ethnic backgrounds are not keen on going into the hierarchies or even just stepping onto the pitch? I mean, we've seen a rise in black players being racially abused. Again, not to get off topic, but look at Alex Scott specifically, where it's like when it was rumoured that I think Sue Barker was going to step back from A Question of Sport, and it was rumoured that Alex Scott was going to take that presenting spot, she got a deluge of racist abuse. So it's one of them ones where it's like, again, you got that underrepresentation on television as well. So I said, football's a microcosm of society, where it's like you've got underrepresentation everywhere, and when someone does try and break through, they get slapped down from it by a parasitic media. So it's like, is it any wonder that there is that underrepresentation when there shouldn't be? There really should not be, but there is. And as we've discussed, a number of reasons for it. But it's one of them ones. It's sad to see in women's football, especially because at the end of the day, that side of the game has always looked more inclusive. From the outside looking in for me, it's like it's always looked that bit more inclusive. And I said from that cup final that we went to in 2015, it's a case of it looked so much more inclusive. The atmosphere was different, where it was like it wasn't the intense tribalism that is prevalent in the men's game. There wasn't that. It was a lot more of a friendly atmosphere because I said there were families, there were children as like about as well, like a group of school kids that we spoke to. So it's one of them where it's like it's so sad to see that there is this lack of representation, and the powers that be don't seem to know why. When I think they do know why. They're just playing dumb or just pleading the fifth. But I think the powers that be know why there's a lack of representation, accessibility, stereotypes, among other issues in terms of representation. So it's like it can be changed, but the system. But yeah, whether it's going to, and the system itself has to be changed. You have to change a system. You can't change parts of a machine and expect the whole machine to change. No, you have to basically destroy and rebuild. You have to completely take that machine apart, cut it, gut it, quarter it, and then you rebuild that same system. Not not in the same way, but you rebuild that system to be more inclusive from the ground up. Not from the top down, from the ground up. And then you rebuild those foundations and you build things on a more level playing field.
I think the problem has always been, just to cut you off there, I think the main issue that I found within the women's game is that there is a massive representation of how many men, or not necessarily men, but 24-year-olds men in the game, representing at the highest level in team sports. And I don't want to gripe about the age or anything like that, but it's almost like it's been treated as, let me just get into this part of this part of football so that I can jump to the men's game.
Oh, so you're talking in terms of the amount of men running the game, but using it as a stepping stone instead of saying, you know what, I want to create a legacy here, I want to help build the game. They're just using it as a stepping stone to get into the men's game.
Massively. And then you look at it from other teams and you kind of go, well, that's a culture that's been created. Mm-hmm. That's just simply how it is. Like, I'd look at it and I think, yes, we probably needed Hegarisa. I'm not saying that she isn't great, but how many coaches out there have all got a UEFA Pro license, may not have the skill set, may not have the level of experience that Hegarisa has as manager of an England national team. But funny enough, Phil Neville's assistant, congrats on the job by the way, has now become the national team for Canada, the national team manager for Canada women. But I look at that and I think, well, shouldn't that be the direction that we should be going in terms of she just, instead of having a male, you now become the female head coach. But then we've noticed that Emma Hayes, fantastic manager, she's got Chelsea to the levels that they needed to be, and she's done it with pretty much little to no backing. Casey Stoney, Lucy, quite a few coaches who were at the top of the game at the time when Mark Sampson was pretty much did the wrong thing, and then he did it again, and that's what really got me.
You're talking about the inappropriate relationship at Bristol Academy ladies that he had, and then again he did
it again, and then it was just like, okay.
If you're seeing people get, also as well, if you're seeing certain people getting away with that kind of thing, that's another barrier where you're thinking, oh, they can get away with that, but if I challenge that person, I'm seen as having an attitude and I get blacklisted for it.
Yeah.
That's not fair. You know what? Bugger it. It's not worth the hassle. I think that's another one as well.
And it was just kind of like one of those things where I just said, like I said with Emma Hayes, she actually said, media, for any reason, I don't need this England job. I don't know, I can't remember the reason why she said she rejected it, but she said there's no point in me going for this job. And I was just like, you know what, good on you, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. For every reason possible, you don't necessarily need the job. You're enjoying your time at Chelsea. Look at the machine that you've made at Chelsea, keep it going as much as possible. As far as I'm concerned, Emma Hayes made the right decision then, as she did with the AFC Wimbledon job, which so happened to be a men's job. And she said no to that. And it's just like, well, why am I going to take a stepping stone down to leave a stepping stone up, which is Chelsea women? And I'm not saying that AFC Wimbledon is a step down. I'm just saying Chelsea women are, in their own right, one of the best teams in the world right now. They don't need to, Emma Hayes didn't need to move on to AFC Wimbledon to notice and get noticed by a bunch of men who probably would have said, well, you shouldn't be here. That's not how it should be. And then look at the women's game and go, well, she left because she just didn't. Everybody's going to say, well, she needed the challenge. No, she didn't. The challenge is every single day working as much as she can. And by rights, she's doing herself proud. She's doing herself proud and she's doing what she can just for the team. She's made Chelsea one of the powerhouses of the WSL. And now, hopefully, she gets through to the Champions League, because at the moment, there's only been one team from England that's ever won the Champions League, the Women's Champions League. It was truly Arsenal. But at the same time, that's the last thing that we need to know. Right now, it's a case of how many people are representing on that stage so that they look like somebody that every woman, every child, every young girl can actually go, I want to be like them someday. Because at the moment, if everybody's still saying that they want to be a presenter, there isn't going to be a footballing team to watch. There's just going to be a lot of women literally presenting men's football. And as much as we don't have enough of those, we don't need everybody becoming a presenter. Mm-hmm. We just need as many as we can get at the same time, as many footballers at the same time on the pitch as well.
I've got a couple of questions for you, just to round out. Do you think we'll see Hope Powell back in the game in terms of high profile? So do you think she'll... Do you think at some point she'll manage another international side? Not go back to the England side,
okay.
But in terms of going back to another international side, do you think, like, let's say the USA ladies or Canada ladies, do you think that Hope Powell will end up getting to a more high profile job within the women's game? Do you think she will jump to the men's game at some point?
Nah.
And also as well, Alex Scott, Rachel Yankey, do you think those two will at some point within the next 5 to 10 years potentially be in the England manager's role for the England ladies?
I would hope that they could, but again, it's not up to me. It's not up for debate.
Do you think it's possible?
Alex Scott could. Rachel Yankey's trying to get there, and it would be nice if she could. She's done a job at London Bees. Barnet, for those that don't know who that is. Hope Powell has been at Brighton and Hove Albion for the past, I think, 2 years now, maybe 3, and has done a good job keeping them in the WSL and trying to prop them up the table. It's not been easy with lack of funding to the women's game. So she's not able to find the players that will probably suit the style that she wants to play. But she's doing amazing with the players that she's got. She always has. She was the first black England manager to grace the side of the pitch. And she so happened to have barriers there. And she's spoken out rightly. I didn't speak to her directly. I listened to her on a Zoom call. Again, I would explain, as much as everybody hates them, get on them if you have a webinar that you can actually listen to, especially in football. And listen to her, and she said that there were barriers holding her back, even when they were going to the World Cup, especially in Japan, where the whole squad had to choose between playing or working. They didn't have enough. They didn't have enough money, apparently, just to make sure that the England squad was represented. So they had to choose between working or paying bills, between working or playing in a World Cup that they may never get the chance to again. It was just like, well, that's the whole point of why you represent your squad, just to have that experience. And unfortunately, they didn't. Some had to choose the latter in terms of paying the bills. Others wanted to play in the World Cup, and it turned out to be the right choice for them. Some, it turned out to be the wrong choice. But that's what it was like in 2011. Excuse me. But again, Hope Powell, again, if she was to take on a role that high, I think it'd have to be somebody who really fully backed her as much as they could and looked at it and went, we know what experience you've got, so we're going to give you minimum 5-year contract to try and do what you can to make the nation as best as possible, be the best players that they can be, not just this team. We want the nation to be in that realm of conversation.
So it's possible, it's just about being given time and resources.
It's possible, it's about the vision that she chooses to hold within the role. Because you can do that with England, but again, the powers that be are the ones that hold the resources. So the choice isn't going to be necessarily easy. I think Canada and USA are a bit more open because they're very competitive and they want to know what the best will be like if they can try. New Zealand, another one. Australia being at the top there, where they will try to give as much as they can. I think it has to be a developing nation. And when I mean developing nation, I mean a team that isn't necessarily established for Hope Powell to actually really shine, so that she can really put a stamp on the game in that country. That's what I think there's a lot of people that need to do nowadays, and that's the ironic thing is it's a case of getting coaches like Powell, Emma Hayes and everybody else to actually go out to, whether they want to or not is up to them. But I'm saying whether they want to go and put their stamp on a team out in Africa or a team out in Asia and go, you know what, we're going to make this the best team in best country for the next 5 years as best as we can. The team to almost beat in this area of the world, then we'll do that. And that's what we're going to do. We're not going to just build upon the next World Cup. We're going to build on the next 2 World Cups, and then hopefully whatever continent they decide to represent, let's just put our money into what can we do to help this whole country become the best footballing nation that they can be at this point in time in their life.
I can see someone like a Rachel Yankey, and especially Alex Scott, with the depth of knowledge that Alex Scott seems to have, because the way she comes across as a pundit, I could definitely see that potentially resulting in an opportunity to manage a club. Hopefully it won't go as bad as Gary Neville at Valencia, because hey, he's a very good pundit, but it doesn't always translate. But Alex Scott, Rachel Yankey, Hope Powell, I'm really hoping that they can potentially be those who open more doors for those of black and minority ethnic backgrounds, because those 3 especially, they're high profile, and have been and continue to be, and then they're known faces. So it's always one of them ones where it's easier to aspire to a known face, because then more people can connect to that and then build that up. So I wish all 3 of them the best. And I think within the next 5-10 years it's possible, but as I'm in agreement with you where they need to be given time and resources, and also not be fast-tracked, and also in the case of, say, an Alex Scott and a Rachel Yankee, not be fast-tracked into a job too early, because that can also have its own pitfalls as well. Paul Ince, Blackburn. If you're fast-tracked into a job too quickly, then it's like, well, it does more harm than good, because if everything crumbles down and you're held responsible for it, you end up looking inept. And then because of the way it seems to be a 1 in, 1 out policy, it's one of them ones where one person can end up burning a bridge for 10 others, because the stereotype is, oh, well, that person didn't succeed. Oh, yeah, let's stay away from that group. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a critical factor within it as well. But you know what? That has been our Pitch Talk special feature with myself, Straight Shooting LJA and
JBK.
It's been an absolute pleasure to sit with the main man once again. The main man, the big man, the medium-sized man. Where's the little man? I don't know where the little man is. But you know what? Yeah, we've had an absolute blast discussing the topic on this Pitch Talk special feature, the underrepresentation of black and minority ethnic female players in football. Remember, youtube.com/Pitch Talk is where you can catch all of our videos. Twitter.com/Pitch Talk or @Pitch Talk. Tweet with us, follow us, see what we're up to @Pitch Talk on Instagram as well. We post previews to our vlogs and podcasts up there, so keep an eye on Instagram for all the preview material and the full versions on YouTube. Also, we do audio versions as well on Podomatic, Podbean, also Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and via Player FM as well, or wherever you pick up your podcasts. Check out our RSS feed. That will be in the description as well. Facebook.com/Pitch Talk. Become a fan, become a friend, become a member of the group. Join the footballing revolution we are working so hard to create. Tell a friend, rate, subscribe, share, spread the word. Like love, Pitch Talk is there to be spread around. But yeah, I said, I've been Straight Shooting LJA.
JBK.
You don't sound sure about that.
I wasn't. I think I zoned out. The lights. Bright lights.
Lights, camera, bright lights. And until
Stage
next...
fright, people, stage fright.
Oh, it's been a blast, man. But you know what? We want to know your views. Comment section is below. Hit us up on the social networks as well. Until next time, thank you so much for joining us on this Pitch Talk special feature. Till next time, see you later, people.
Pitch Talks special feature.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Pitch Talk.
We are fans of football dropping vlogs, videos and podcasts on the beautiful game.
Check out our videos on YouTube and Instagram's IGTV.
including special feature segments, vlogs such as
5 minutes with the G.
The Straight Shooting View,
Coaching with JBK,
Audio on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts,
Podomatic, Spotify, and other podcast platforms.
Join the Pitch Talk revolution on social media, Twitter, Instagram.
We have a group and fan page on Facebook.
The pitch is where we eat.
The pitch is where we sleep.
And the pitch is where we talk.